All right, let's dive into a truly fascinating corporate power struggle. Seriously, this story has it all: a massive windfall of cash, a sudden change in leadership, and a brilliant, maybe even controversial, maneuver that has two powerful factions locked in an epic battle for control. So let's just start with a question that's probably already popping into your head, because it's at the heart of this whole thing. How on earth can a company use its own money to take over itself? I know, it sounds like a complete paradox, but it is exactly what's happening in the battle for TRG Pakistan. Okay, so let's set the stage. To really understand how this is even possible, we first need to look at what makes the case of TRG Pakistan such a strange and fascinating corporate puzzle.
At its absolute core, the situation is this. An investee company, that is, a company that is owned by another, is actively trying to buy up the shares of its own parent company. Think about that. Normally, power and money flow down, from the parent to the subsidiary. But here, the child company is trying to become the parent. To really wrap your head around this, you have to look at the corporate structure, kind of like a family tree. At the very top, you have TRG Pakistan. We'll call it TRGP. That's the main parent company. Now, TRGP owns a majority stake, over half, of another company, TRG International, or TRGI. And TRGI, in turn, fully owns the entity that becomes the key player in all of this, Green Tree Holdings. So just remember those three: TRGP at the top, TRGI in the middle, and Green Tree at the bottom.
So, what kicks off a corporate war like this? Well, it's almost always about one thing: money. A lot of money. Let's take a look at the players involved and the massive prize that really set this whole conflict in motion. And here it is, the prize. Back in 2021, a hugely successful asset sale meant that TRG Pakistan was suddenly entitled to its share of the cash, a staggering 21.5 billion rupees. That is a massive windfall by any measure. And to put that number into perspective, check this out. That 21.5 billion rupees wasn't just some nice bonus, it was absolutely transformative. It represented a whopping 43% of TRG Pakistan's entire book value. That's basically the total value of the company's assets. So we're not just talking about spare change here. This was a king-making amount of capital. So who was in control when this mountain of cash landed? Well, the shareholders were pretty diverse, but there were two major players at the table. The largest individual shareholder was the CEO at the time, and another key faction was the JS Group. Keep those two in mind because they are about to become the opposing sides in this whole drama. So just as everyone was wondering what the company would do with all this cash, a series of events unfolded that led to a traumatic and completely unexpected move. A maneuver that literally turned the tables on the entire power structure. And this timeline shows you just how quickly everything escalated. First, the money comes in. Then, in a really critical development, on November 29th, the CEO, remember, the company's biggest individual shareholder, is out. He departs. And then, less than a month later, the new leadership announces a totally different plan for that 21.5 billion rupee prize. Now, to pull off this plan, they used a very specific financial tool, a special purpose vehicle, or an SPV. Don't let the name fool you, it's a simple concept. It's just a separate company created for one single, focused goal. And in this case, that goal was about to become very, very controversial. And here is that plan. It's pretty wild. Step 1. TRG International would take all that cash and stick it into a brand new SPV. Simple enough. Step 2. They named this new company Green Tree Holdings. And then, step 3, this is the masterstroke. Green Tree would use its parent's own money to go out and buy shares of its grandparent, TRG Pakistan, directly on the stock market. As you can probably guess, this maneuver immediately split the shareholders and kicked off an all-out corporate tug-of-war for the future of the company. And you can see that strategy in motion right here. Green Tree Holdings just started buying up shares on the open market. Its stake in TRG Pakistan grew and grew, getting dangerously close to that 30% threshold. Now, that's a critical legal line in the sand. Once you cross it, you're required to make a formal takeover offer to all the other shareholders. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happened. Towards the end of 2024, Green Tree made it official. It launched a formal takeover bid to try and acquire a huge chunk of the company. The battle lines were no longer just drawn, open war had been declared. So now you have two very clear camps. On one side, you've got the former CEO and the JS Group, and they are fighting tooth and nail to resist this takeover, using every legal challenge they can find. And on the other side, you have the new leadership of TRGP and its own investee company TRGI, using their own legal maneuvers to try and limit the voting power of their opponents. It is a true corporate tug of war. So where does all of this leave us today? Well, the truth is, this is an unfinished war, and the contest for control is still very much ongoing. Here's the current status update. The takeover bid by Greentree has not succeeded. At least, not yet. The two factions are pretty much locked in a stalemate, with the ultimate control of TRG Pakistan just hanging in the balance. And honestly, this quote from the source material just perfectly captures the mind-bending nature of this whole affair. An investee company is trying to acquire its own majority shareholder using money that belonged to that very same shareholder in the first place. It's a perfect, bizarre corporate circle. And that really leaves us with one final and really important question to think about. When two powerful factions are locked in a battle like this, using a company's own money to fight that battle, who is truly pulling the rope for the average shareholder who's just caught in the middle? Something to think about.